So today we're going to take a look at mail merge in our Tech Talk, which is an option we have when we have a collection of data in an Excel spreadsheet and then a formatted letter or labels or a Word certificate of some kind in Word, and we want to combine those two things together, where each row of data from the spreadsheet becomes an individual letter or award that gets saved in Word. So let's take a look at how those two things go together today. I would come to Departments and click on Technology Services. From there, click on Support Resources. And that's where I was saying you find everything. Like all the different software that we use is pretty much here. I'll go to Word, but really if you go to any of these Office apps, the same information is at the bottom of the page on any of them. So just scroll to the bottom, and that's where I find this at-home use program. And this link right here is what I was clicking on and babbling about there while you guys couldn't see anything. And Canadian, there we go. This is where I was suggesting you would type in your email address and get started. And that gives you that Office 365 and then the option to download the rest of it as well. So that is an option for TLDSB staff. You can go ahead and type that in. Type in your work email address, of course, so it can verify that you are, in fact, in education and that we have a deal with Microsoft, and you'll be able to get it that way. So you can still download at home if you need to. All right. So in terms of what we're going to mess with today, presuming that you're able to look at it, I'm going to go ahead and share a link here in the chat that is going to allow you to get a copy of this file. So I'm going to open it up and show you how this works. You'll even see it here. Anytime you need somebody to have a copy of a file, what I can do, rather than sharing it with you normally, is I'm looking at the address here. And when I look up at the top, I see a whole bunch of gibberish. I don't really care about that right now, but then it says edit and a bit of information after that. Well, I'm going to take the word edit and everything after it and get rid of that and replace it with the word copy. And this is the link I'm about to send you guys. So I'm going to highlight that and copy the link. And I'm going to put this in the chat. And what it's going to do is allow you to create your own copy of that data, which, because it's an Excel file, you can then download to your computer. So when you do click that in the chat, you're going to end up seeing something like this. Well, you're going to see exactly that. And then you can go ahead and click on Make a Copy. That will put a copy into your own drive. So I'm going to click that myself, just like you will.
We'll need you to share access, by the way.
Oh, that is always one of those little hiccups with that particular file. Here, I'm going to go ahead and say share with everybody. Done, and that will make that work. So if that didn't work the first time, go ahead and refresh, and that will pop that up and make it function properly for you. Yeah, you need at least viewing access before people can actually use that make a copy button. So glad somebody mentioned that one. That one I sometimes forget about when I'm using that particular feature. Once I've got this up on screen though, because I actually want the Excel file on my computer, I'm going to go ahead and click the File menu. And I'm just going to say, download Excel. Now, as I look at this menu, it looks like they've added a new feature here that says Save as Google Sheets. I've never seen that option before. I don't know if that's necessarily going to download to my computer or if it's going to keep it as a, oh, no, sorry, even as I say it out loud, Save as Google Sheets, that's going to convert it from Excel into a Google Sheet, which a lot of the time I would do if I was going to work with this in Sheets. But because here we actually need it on our machine in Excel, that's why I'm definitely coming to this download choice. And I'm going to say download as Microsoft Excel. And I will put that in my downloads folder, or if maybe for today, if I want to put that somewhere specific, I could instead choose my desktop and I'll make a folder. I'll make one right now and just call it merge example. Open up that folder. I'm going to save it right here. And there's my file sitting there. A copy of my fake demographics. Perfect. Okay. So with that up, what I'm going to do is go ahead and open that file in Excel just to take a look at it. I know I can see it in the background, but this lets us confirm that everything's working in Excel the way it's supposed to. And I know it's all going to be there. And anytime you grab anything from the web, even when it's your own stuff, you're going to see this protected view message at the top. Go ahead and click on Enable Editing, and you'll be able to get all your tools popping up here. And we're not necessarily needing to change anything in here. We're really just taking a brief look at what's there so it makes a bit of sense to you. I've got a few columns here for a fake student number and full names. I've got first name, last name broken up if you need it. I've got fake email addresses and all kinds of other sort of basic information here. I didn't start filling in marks and grades and things. It was just sort of simple demographics that we can work with. And then what a mail merge is, I should probably just preface with that one if we've never played with it before, is the idea that I can take all of this data and then apply it to a document, whether that document is again a letter or some labels, some name tags possibly, or award certificates, whatever it might be, and I only have to set up that document once, and it will then generate unique copies of that document for however many rows of data I've got here. So I've got 29 fake names in there, and that's fine. But what I've also got is it could be, I mean, hundreds of names potentially. If I've exported these from a school list of some kind, or there's just a big event registration or whatever it might be, I might be trying to create a ton of documents, whether they're just participant stuff or possibly permission forms based on who's registered for some event or anything along those lines. There's just times where you need to generate a lot of information or a lot of documents all at once from data like this. So with that all okay, I'm just going to click Save and close it. I don't need to open for anything right now. And I need to make myself a Word file. So I could go to the Start button, of course, or the Windows button down the bottom corner, and I could start hunting through my list here for Word stuff. Where's my MS Office, even as I say that? There's Excel right there. Where's Word? See, Publisher, PowerPoint. There's Word way at the bottom. So I could come down and hunt for that, certainly. I could click on that and launch a document. I do have it pinned, as much as I just hunted through the list. I have it pinned on my main list here for when I do need it. But I'll show you one other option if you've never done it before. Since I'm right here in this folder, my merge example folder, and really I want to keep these files all together, your extra little hot tip for the day, if I'm in one of these folders, I'm browsing around on my computer and I just right click when I choose new, it does give me the option to create some new stuff right out of the gate there, right off that menu. And one of them is, of course, a Microsoft Word document. So if I do it this way by just saying new Word document, it launches right there. And I'll go ahead and name it. This will be my letter. It's a blank document, of course, and we're about to open that up and play with it. But if you want to go ahead and just create a new document that way, or open Word the way you typically would, however you prefer, we're just going to launch a new Word document here. And the first one will be our letter example. So I'm going to open that up. I'm going to show you a neat little trick here to get some content into our letter for us. Um, Now, I know I'm going to probably start this off with, say, an address, since that information was in our document. So I'm just going to write that in there real quick, address. It might be, dear parent slash guardian of, and then I'm going to end up putting that student name here. So maybe I'll just type name in all capitals for 2 seconds. And then I'm going to have some, information there that I'm sending home to these parents. So here's another little thing that you may, I'm sure most of us have never played with before, realized was in here. What I'll get you to do is type on your Word document, just to give us some text here, we're going to type equals RAND, kind of like you're about to spell random, but RAND. There's no space here. It's just equals R-A-N-D, and then I'm going to do a open bracket and a close bracket. And I'm about to hit enter, but I'm going to leave this on screen for a moment just so you guys can see it. Equal R-A-N-D, and then an open and a closed bracket. And there's no space in there at all. And as soon as I hit enter, I get a bunch of text. I don't even care what it says at this point. In fact, in previous versions of Office, it would still do this feature, but it would give you that sort of Latin filler text, the lorem ipsum, blah, blah, blah. Just filler nonsense. It looks like now with the latest version of Word, they've started to throw in some text here. It talks about video, making your document look professional, doing themes. It's just a bunch of like tips about Word now, which is kind of interesting. But for anybody who didn't see that, maybe you're looking at your own screen. I'll just hit undo real quick. It was equals R-A-N-D, open bracket, a closed bracket, and then hit your enter key. And it drops in that gibberish. Well, it's not gibberish, it's real text now. But there's a bunch of text that you can sort of have as part of your letter. Now that's just setting up the letter, of course. We haven't merged or connected anything yet. So I'm just going to pause for a moment and give you guys a second to have a document ready to play with if you're able to follow along here. I'll jump over and double check our chat real quick and just see if there's anything in there you guys are chiming in on. It looks like we're okay. Perfect. Oh, that's interesting. Um, Hopefully you guys are okay. Sounds like it. Only have one screen. Yeah, difficult for sure. And I'll intentionally repeat myself a few times there, Janice, so that you do maybe hear me while I'm doing it and then hear me a second time while you're on your own there. Because I do want to give you guys a moment to be able to switch back and forth between Word and what we're doing here, yeah, what we're watching. So on the document, and certainly taking notes works. I will, of course, be publishing some videos and some information about this on the Tech Talk page as follow-up. But I'll try not to drag it out too much for us here today. So when I'm ready to connect this particular letter to some data, what I'm going to do is come up to the Mailings tab at the top in Word. So I click on Mailings. And there's a couple ways to go about this. A lot of people, especially in the older versions of Office, if you've done this before, used to use the wizard a lot. And the wizard is okay. What the wizard essentially is doing is just walking you from left to right across this toolbar. So I'm going to do that as well. I'm going to click on Start Mail Merge. And what I might do, I don't actually need to click letter this time because I've already got a letter going here. So I'm going to work with what I've got. But for another example that we can do real quick once we get this done, would be those name tags. That's where I would choose labels. So I'm going to make that my next example. But because I've already started a letter, I don't even need this first button, the Start Mail Merge button. I can skip it. If I were to go to the step-by-step mail merge wizard, I'll go ahead and hit that for you. That is the first question. Do you want to use a letter? And then you just go next. And where it says starting the document, that's the next step. Well, that's what I've already done. I started a document. So we've already covered a couple of the steps that would be in your wizard typically. The next one where it says select recipients, which is going to be like step 3 of the wizard. Well, that's the second button on our toolbar here. So I'm just going to click on select recipients. Now, I'm not going to start typing a new list, of course. I just provided you guys a list, so we know we've got one. And I'm certainly not connecting with Outlook. So my only other option is right in the middle here, use an existing list. I'm going to hit that, and it spins up a little window here for me to start going and selecting my files. And since I made that folder on the desktop, that's where I'm going to go to connect to my Excel file that I created, and you can browse to wherever you might have yours. I'm going to click on that Excel file, or double click technically, to get it connected. And it pops up this little window saying, do you want to select a table that you've got in here? Well, as you know, Excel files typically have sheet 1, sheet 2, and sheet 3 when you first create them. And they might have more and more sheets. And depending on how you're organizing data in Excel, the data you're looking for could be on, well, any one of those sheets. So that's what this particular little window popping up is all about. If I had multiple sheets of data in that particular file, then I would see those sheets being listed here. But I don't, so that's okay. It says alternating colors because I was working with this sheet in the past, And I guess without looking, I had gone ahead and left that tab named alternating colors. So it's not a big deal. It doesn't matter what it's called. More important than that really is this little checkbox that we see below it where it says first row of data contains column headers. Hopefully it does contain some column headers so you know what your data is that you're working with. But because it does, and in this case I know it does, I want to make sure that I do check that first row has headers option. It's going to make a big difference for the next step that we do here. So I'm going to click OK, and now I'm connected, which means this third button has lit up here. The Edit Recipient List button has suddenly lit up, and so did these other ones in the middle section here. Well, just to come back to the wizard, in case you're a fan of the wizard, and that's what you've seen in the past, if I click Next, that is the next step that it wants me to do, is edit the recipient list. Or select a different one, since I've already chosen an existing list and connected it here. The next step in the wizard where it says write your letter, well, that's dropping in different chunks of information from your data, which is exactly what we're doing right up here. In fact, it shows you the same features: address block, greeting line, electronic postage, and more items. Well, that's right here: address book, greeting line, and the ability to insert specific merge fields from my data. So right here, I suggested on the letter that I would do an address block. And I can do that completely manually if I want to, or I can try and use the existing address block feature. So I'm going to remove the word address, and I'll go ahead and hit address block and see how it handles it. And it was able to look at my data and figure out first names and street names and postal codes and all that stuff. And of course, it put together a little sample right here of what it thinks it's going to look like. It says only include the country or region if it's different from the US. So this is obviously a US default. I'm going to go ahead and leave it the way it is and include the word Canada. That's okay. If I want to adjust how that name is represented, I can do that right here in the top, and it'll manipulate the name a bit for me, but it looks pretty good the way it is. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK. Now, all I see on the page is, with these little angled brackets, the word address block. If instead I had wanted to create this completely on my own, then instead of the address block, I would have had to come up here to Insert Merge Field. And I am going to use that, of course, because what I do want to do is insert the person's name here. So I'm going to get rid of the word name, hit backspace. And I have two options on this button. You can kind of see this button is divided into two halves, that top half and that second half. And the second half, well, I'll show you both. The first half, if I click it, pops up a little box for me where I can see all of my different column headers that I had on the data. And if I click on any one of them, like say first name, nothing happens yet. If I double click, it actually inserts it wherever my cursor was sitting a second ago. So now I see first name sitting there. If I knew there was something else I want to include, like say last name, I could double click on that. And it jams it in there right after the last one. There's no space at all between these, so I'm going to have to go in there and do that myself. But if I wanted to add any other fields, I could do that as well. And then now it can close. If instead of double clicking, I had selected something like, say, full name, that was all I needed, I can just click insert and this box goes away. Or did it? Oh, no, sorry, they've tweaked that a little bit. It just drops it right in there now. All right, fine. So either way, I have to hit close. That's one way to add those in. I'm going to go ahead and delete that, partly in case anybody was on their own screen following along or watching me or vice versa. I'll do it a second time. But what I'm going to do here is show you the other half of that button. Instead of having a box pop up that I have to select from, I'm going to go ahead and use the bottom half of this button, which personally is what I use 99% of the time. I'm going to click that and say, you know what, I need their full name. And I just click it. And it drops it right in there. And the reason I like that is because in between adding those tags, I can continue typing. So if I had done, say, first name, I could hit space and then hit last name. I don't have to come back to it and edit. I kind of edit along the way. Both are equally effective. It's going to be just fine, but this allows me to just have a bit more sort of control as I'm creating it, I guess, is the way I like to do it. Now, if I'm curious how any of this is going to look, that's where I have up on our toolbar here, this preview button. So I can click preview and it's going to show me what that looks like. And now I can see that address block and how it's all sort of spaced out. I can see Benjamin's name right there. And then the rest of the letter is sort of standard. Everybody's going to get the same kind of thing in there. There we go. Sorry, I just got interrupted there. If anybody had a question when I took my headphones off. Now, at the moment, as I stare at this, I said that address block is kind of spaced out a fair bit, like the way that spacing is working. So there's a couple of ways I could manipulate that. I can highlight this text. I can come up to my home ribbon and use all my normal text editing type tools. So I'm going to come to line spacing here and see if I can just remove spacing after paragraph. There, that will tighten that up. So that's right here under my line spacing tools between single spaced and double spaced and all that kind of stuff. I can come and make sure I've removed any space that's happening before or after my paragraphs. And that'll tighten that up for me. Now, if I just really like writing addresses my own way, then I can go to that mailings tab, and instead of using the address block feature where it kind of structures it and sets it up for you, I could have also gone to this insert merge field choice and just created it one step at a time by myself. So I could have said, full name, and then I'd have to do shift enter to get that hard return, or I'd go ahead and set up my line spacing again to be really, really tight. And I'd continue down this list and say, all right, I want his address, and then his city, and then his postal code, and then his country, and I just add those individual pieces in there as I'm doing that. So I would see address, and then city. Maybe I just want to put in a little comma, followed by another comma, and I'll throw in the postal code, comma, country. Done. Now that, of course, is not how you would ever actually write somebody's address on a document. The point I really want to make is just that you have control and flexibility over exactly how all these elements lay themselves down on the sheet. You can take all of these different pieces of data and place them wherever you want. As I go back to the preview button here, this preview results button, turn that off, you can now see, okay, that first one was just an address block and it sort of took care of all of it. Whereas this next chunk, I see all of the individual little tags sitting there that I had just added. And you can do that either way. You can have it with your preview results tab on or with it turned off. One of the big things with the preview option, of course, is it just lets you see what things really look like. And then with the little arrows that you have up on this preview results section, I can start going through my records. So I can go to the next document and the next one and the next one. And I'm going to see the names and the addresses change for every single one. But my content doesn't. It's still a one-page document. I haven't added, hundreds of pages to this. But when I'm done, when I'm ready, and I say, all right, I've set up my merge, I've created what I need to create. Now I need, the 20 of them or 200 of them or however many there might be. That's where I come to this last button on my toolbar here, or almost last if I didn't have this Adobe thing added on there. And even before I click it, I'll continue with the little wizard along the side here that I said some of us are very used to, where it says next. Well, the next stage, it says preview your letters, and that's exactly what it's going to do, is basically turn on this preview results feature for me and let me start scrolling through these different recipients as well. So the wizard's doing exactly what we're doing right here on the toolbar. And the last step says complete the merge. Well, that's exactly what this last button is, finishing the merge. So I'm going to click it, and it gives me some choices. The last one is useless. We're not going to use send email messages. That's sort of a Microsoft Office thing. It's presuming that you're using Microsoft Outlook for all of your email and you've set it up with contact lists and all these other things. That's where that would work. It also presumes that we've got email addresses in our data that we've selected and said, this is where I want things to go. So that's not an option we're going to use. You're going to end up choosing one of these two options. Now, edit individual documents is a handy one because what it'll do is spit out one giant document with, a page for every one of these merges, and it allows you to scroll down to one of these people if you decide, oh, I need to adjust something on one of these particular letters, or I need to add in a special paragraph for, one or two kids, but not the rest of the class. That kind of thing. That's where edit individual documents is going to be really handy. So I'll do that first. I'm going to go ahead and click it. And of course, I want all of my records. If for some reason I had a giant set of records here, but maybe I only wanted from record 1 to record 5 for some reason, I could do that as well. But in this example, I'll leave it at all. I'm going to take care of everything, and I'm going to click OK. So here I've got a new document created. In fact, if I hover on Word at the bottom, I can see I've got two documents now. One was called letter, and that's the one I started with that has all the merge connection stuff. This new one, just called letters 1, has 28 pages. And as I scroll down, I'll see Benjamin, and then Charles, and then Emma, and Hank. So it's just going to keep going down through my list. I've got all the correct people added to every single one of these, and I could go ahead and say, print, and I'd have individual letters to put in envelopes or put in OSRs or put in wherever I needed to, and I'd be ready to go. But I'd also have the option here to go ahead and just adjust individual letters however I see fit if I needed to do something special with, in this case, Jennifer's. And then I'd be ready to print. If I didn't need to make any kind of changes at all, I'll just minimize this guy for a moment. Then, of course, I could have used finish and merge and said print documents. And I'll point out that when I do choose that option, I don't think I even have printers connected here. It's going to try Kyocera. I could print all those to an actual printer, or I should still have the ability, hopefully, to print to a PDF. So if I just wanted to save a PDF of all of these finished merged files, I could do that and then print it later when I'm ready, if that's the case, or just store it away in my files for later. If that's what I need to do. So you have different options there, whether you generate the individual documents this way and then save that, or if you just say finish and merge and you save the whole thing as a PDF. I typically tend to create this one. I do the edit option, even if I don't plan to really edit something, and then I save this. Because what'll happen, is this, sorry, not that it looks any different, but the larger, in this case, 28-page version is the one I'll end up saving and stashing in my files somewhere as a Word document typically, so that I can make any tweaks if I needed to. But the reason I tend to save this version, I'll just minimize that, is because the one that is still connected to my list, if the data in that list changes or that data gets deleted for some reason, like the Excel file gets deleted, and I go and open up my Word document, it's broken. Like all I'm going to see are these tags, and there's no data connected to them anymore. So as my own little sort of security blanket, I tend to hit that finish and merge button. I choose the edit individual documents, and then I save that larger document that gets generated as kind of my final merge version. The other handy thing about it is that if your data does change, like you get more people added to that data, you can always come back to here and you can go ahead and generate this again without having to set anything up. It's all saved, it's done, your tags are in there, the content is in there, you're ready to go. The only thing is that you would then need to hit that and maybe grab, if you just added the last 10 records, you could say, oh, from, 190, there it goes, 190 to 200, if that happened to be the last 10 that you just added and you want to generate those separately, you could do that certainly. Let me just go check the chat here, see if there's anything that we're missing. Is it possible to add the letterhead template? Janice, yes, because you can generate these from any document you want. We started a blank Word document there to do it, but if I had anything at all that already had content in it, like a template, I could certainly use that document, and I would just come up to select recipients. I can skip this first button. I would simply select recipients and connect to my list and carry forward from there. So absolutely, yes, you can use letterheads, no problem at all. Now, I also said we would look at maybe labels and name tags. So I'm going to touch on that here. What I'll do is simply say File and New. I'm just going to start something fresh. I'll just go blank for right now. Done. So from a blank document, I can come up to that Mailings tab, just like we did previously. I've got nothing going on here at all. And I'm going to go to Start Mail Merge. And what I'll do is just choose Labels. Now, this is important that I do it from the Mail Merge button here rather than just generating labels here. That's actually for something else. This Mailings tab is good for both Mail Merge stuff, and it's also good for setting out an envelope or creating some labels. But these first options aren't necessarily connected to data. That's why I want to make sure I use this Start Mail Merge option. And there's an important piece as we go through this here. So I'm going to go ahead and do it. Start my mail merge, and I'm going to go with labels. Now, when I do that, it's going to spin up this little box for me here. And by default, it usually will jump to Microsoft here. Let's see, Microsoft. I was messing with this right before we started, so that's why it didn't go to Microsoft for me. Oh, geez, here we go. There's Microsoft. There, that's what it typically pops up with as your default in terms of your label vendors. And there's a bunch of different product number things here, how many labels per sheet you might be getting, and then little measurements over at the side, except the vast majority of us are using Avery labels for our labels. Especially if you are, say, working in the library and you're creating labels, you're using those Avery labels as well. So you may have sheets of those guys around regardless. I'm going to go to my label vendors drop down here that I was just messing with. And of course, there is Avery in there as one of your choices. So let's scroll down here till I find Avery, and be careful not to pick the first one. The first one says Avery A4/A5, and that's a different paper size than what we use. We don't use A4 here. We use the US letter size, that 8.5 by 11 size. Once I choose that, I'm going to see a list of all kinds of different labels here, but they all have numbers right at the beginning. And when you look on your Avery label package, they will have a big number right on the front of it usually. And 5160 is the most common address label that we use right there. So as soon as I choose that 5160 address label, I can click OK. And it will spin up a document for me here with those labels all perfectly aligned and set up exactly like the sticker sheets will be. Now, as we're doing that, I'm going to come up now and notice that there is a table tools set of tabs that have just popped up, because that's really all these labels are. It's a table that's all set up and ready to go with the correct dimensions so that we're not having to fudge it back and forth and mess around with it. But if I go to design for a moment, design, no, layout, that's the one. What you might be seeing when you first create it looks more like this. It's just a blank looking file, and if you're lucky, you see that little 4 arrow point up in the corner. That's why I'm coming to my layout tab here and clicking on view grid lines, because I don't actually want to print grid lines. I'm not going to turn on borders so that I can see lines all over my page and have those print, unless that's the style I'm going for. But typically, I just want to be able to see what am I even looking at here. So I'll turn on these grid lines, and it gives me this visual of what's going on in my document. We can even zoom in a bit for you guys on that too. There we go. So I'll pause there for a moment just in case anybody's hoping to follow along here with this next example. The first step was simply coming to mailings, saying start mail merge and choosing labels. And that's where I got that box to pop up and give me a whole selection of different label options to go with. And as I suggested, I went with the Avery 5160 just because it's our most common address label that we typically use. And with those grid lines turned on, I'm on my mailings tab here, and I'm going to follow a bunch of the same steps I just did on the letter. I'm going to go ahead and select recipients. I'm going to say use an existing list. Where's my merge example folder? There we go. I'll click on my fake demographics and say open. And once again, of course, it has a row of data at the top with my column headers, and I'm ready to say OK. Beautiful. Now, what it does automatically is throw this next record tag in there for you. Because when we think about our data, and I can go back to my spreadsheet I had open online here just so I can look at it, each row is a record. So I want the data from that first row to be applied to my first document. And that made perfect sense when I was doing the letter. I had my entire letter set up. I wanted just, in that case, Benjamin Grimm's, name and address and such to be on that first letter. Then it wasn't until we, got to the next version of that letter that I wanted the next row to be the record that's being accessed. Except with labels, it's a little different. I don't want an entire sheet of labels just for Benjamin Grimm. I want the very first label for that particular person. I want the next label to be the next row of data in my spreadsheet. So that is the next record. So all I'm going to do here, I'm not going to fill in an entire sheet's worth of labels because that's a bit tedious. Instead, what I do is I come to the very first label and I need to add whatever information I'm interested in here. So that might be the, let's go full name, and maybe I want to put what grade they're in. So I'm going to hit enter and go to the merge field and choose, what was grade? I'm sure it was on there. Oh, maybe I didn't. Okay, that's fine. Maybe it's student number. I'll go with name and student number just for fun. And if I want to manipulate how this looks, I'm going to do that right here in this label. So I'm going to select these just like I would select any regular text that I was messing around with. And I'm going to go to my home ribbon and decide I would like that to be centered. Maybe I'd like it to be bold. Maybe I'd like the name to be red and even a little bit bigger. I'm going to bump up the size to 14. We'll see how that goes. Done. So just a little bit of formatting, just to make it a little bit fancier. In fact, if I go to my table tools, I believe I have an option here under layout to say, you know what, not only do I want that horizontally centered, I want it vertically centered too. I want this all right in the middle, like that. So that's over here under the table tools layout, and I have actually a bunch of ways I can align this text. Now I'm going to come back to my mailings tab. And of course, I can always preview to see how things are looking. And I'm going to see Benjamin Grimm and nothing else because I haven't put in the other records yet. But here's where I say you don't need to go through and do all these different labels. You've got one sheet here, one page, all set up and ready to go. And once I've created my label exactly how I want it to look, well, on my mailings list here, I look across past the actual fields that I was looking at, and right next to it, I see a button that says Update Labels. That will do exactly what I want it to do. I'm going to go ahead and click that, and it will populate all those other fields with the data that I've set up in the first one. So all those labels get filled up. I don't need to touch that next record. I don't care that it's there because it doesn't actually take up any space when we merge everything. So it's not like full name is going to get pushed over to the right or anything. And just to confirm that, I can go ahead and preview these results. And there's all of those people, all set up the way I want them to be. And so then I can see that, all right, I've got my first page ready to go. And in this case, it looks like I had just enough records. It only actually took one page. But I'll go ahead and say finish and merge. And just like before, I will edit individual documents. I'll say all and click OK. And that's going to give me my final version here. There we go, where they're all out. Now, if I had had enough names to go onto the next page, it would just keep going, keep going, keep going. And it looks like it did for some of the blanks. So I would only print that first page, of course, if I was printing this onto actual labels. Now I'll just see if we have some questions in the chat again. And then the last example I wanted to touch on was sort of an award certificate type idea. A little bit prettier and fancier. Yeah, they didn't center horizontally like the first one. I noticed that as well. So I'm kind of curious as to what went on there and why that is. Let me go ahead and, oh, of course, because yeah, I did that. I updated the labels and then I decided to center it. So if I just hit update labels again, let's see what it does here. Go here. Oh, sorry. Even as I say it out loud, I know what I did. Um, Anything that I do that's mail merge related, like adding these tags, gets updated across all the labels. The actual centering I did over on my table tools feature here, where I said I want to center that. So really what I needed to do was just make sure that I select my entire table and apply that to the whole table of labels. So what I'll do is go back to where I was working. Yeah, that's where I was working. Good. Now I can select my entire table two ways. I can come up here to the corner where I see the arrowheads pointing all directions and click it once. That will select my entire table. And I can come over here and click that alignment center option, and that will fix everybody all at once. Or if I didn't know about that feature, here I'll hit undo. The other way to do it on my table tools ribbon, the same one I'm going to come to set my centering in the first place, I come to the far left, right next to that view grid lines that we looked at earlier, and click on my select button. And it will say, all right, you want to select a cell, a column, a row, or, of course, in this case, the entire table. Perfect. Come over to my alignment tools and say centered. Done. Now I'm safe to go ahead and say mailings, finish and merge, and edit everything. And I'll do it all again. Beautiful. Spins up a brand new file, and now everything got centered properly the way I actually wanted it to be centered. Good stuff. I'll touch on this labels piece here, just before, so I don't run out of time here today. What's going on there? When I go to my edit recipient list, this is something you can do at any time if you've got a bunch of records that you're merging onto really anything at all, and things aren't quite the way you want, or you've got more data than you wanted, or less data potentially if somebody's already messed around with it. I can say edit recipient list. It spins up this little box that shows me all of the data that I've already got in there. But as I scroll down here, what I'm likely to see is a bunch of blank rows. I must have done something earlier, and it's including all these blank rows in here that I don't want. So I can filter this data. I don't need to go back to my sheets or something and try and delete a bunch of blanks. What I can do is just say, all right, well, I want to filter just by choosing filter right here. I'll pick any field at this point, really. It doesn't matter. I'll go with, say, student number. I want anything that is not blank. Boop, done. That's it. Just anything that's not blank, and say OK. Now when I scroll down, no more blanks at the bottom. So I can say OK. And if I finally do a finish and merge one more time, edit all documents and say OK, this time I won't get a label sheet full of blanks below it. It is a one-page label sheet that's ready to go. So that's a helpful little add-on there that you can mess around with your data whenever you need to by hitting edit recipient list and using that filter choice. And you can do things like give me anything that's a grade above 50 or a grade below 50 if you've got, you know, red notices to send home. If you want to say, give me anything where the birthday is greater than a certain date or less than a certain date. If you want to filter by, of course, in this case, blanks, to get rid of them, you can do that. You could filter by maybe people who are just at your school or just in your area or just by certain cities. It all depends on the data that you've got, of course. But the point is you can filter out based on whatever criteria you've got with the data that you're using. Let me say OK there. I'll just double check our chat real quick. The last example is very similar now. Yep, haven't lost anybody. Perfect. Um, the last one is like an award certificate type idea and very, very similar to what we've done so far. So I'll jump back into my document here. I'm going to make a new one. I'm going to go ahead and say File, New, and of course, there's a bunch of different templates available in here for you with Word. I mean, it gives you, you know, calendars and brochures and all sorts of things in here, reports and such. I want an award. So I've got one popping up here because I messed around with it already, but I'm going to show you what I did and just type award and do a little search because you can find lots of different things in here. I will go with that one I messed with previously just because it's easy and say create. So whether you use a template or you just build it from scratch, it's all up to you how you want to handle that. No problems that way. As long as it's on here, it'll work. And so what it's doing now, it's saying this acknowledges that, hey, recipient's name. Okay, great. So I know exactly where I'm going to put stuff. That makes it easy, but I still need to connect to my data. So for the third time, I go mailings, select recipient, use existing list, grab my data from wherever I've kept it. Where did it go? There it is. Cool. Say OK. I'll go a little quicker for you guys this time because we're getting hit about 2 o'clock. I don't want to keep you more than an hour. So for recipient name, I'm just going to go there and delete that. And of course, insert the full name. Let's see, has successfully completed the, what is it going to be? Well, I did have a column in there for, if I go back to my spreadsheet for a second, I added one column for this particularly called award. And I just threw in a bunch of different subject areas that you might possibly get an award for. So we'll use that. I'm going to go ahead and say has complete. Let's see, not successfully. Let's see, has, I don't know, successfully. I'm not sure. I'll let you guys think about the wording. I'm just going to click here for a second. Delete that and insert the award name. Call it the there, has achieved excellence in, if I can spell that correctly. Oh geez, apparently not. Has achieved excellence in whatever that award name might be. You can throw in dates here. You could just type that in. If everybody's getting their award on the same day, you could drop in signatures and school logos. You could tweak up the color scheme, whatever you want to do. But of course, as I'm sure you figured out by now, I'm going to click Finish and Merge, edit individual documents. I might go through and just double check I'm not going to get those blanks again. So let me edit that recipient list. Of course, I've got blanks in there. Okay, filter. I'm going to choose student number again because it's easy. Where there are no blanks, where are you? Greater than, less than, is not blank. Perfect. Say OK. Much shorter list. I like that. Say OK. I can preview. Yep, Benjamin dropped in there. Math looks pretty boring. Let me bump that up by using some styles here to make it pretty. Math. What else can we do? Heading, maybe. Center it, bump it up. There we go. Make it just a little bit prettier. All right, mailings, finish and merge, edit individuals, and OK. So there you go. It spit out another document for me that if I scroll down, I'm going to see Benjamin was great in math, Charles in science, Emma in history, Hank in phys ed. We got soccer, rugby, drama, all these good things. Perfect. All right. So I've got my amazing certificates ready to go, and of course I could send those to the printer. I'm seeing all these extra lines because previously I had my grid lines turned on when I set that up, but if I wanted to hide my grid lines, I could. They won't print no matter what. Even if you've got grid lines turned on, you can hit print and they're not going to show up when you print them, so that's fine. It's just a visual thing when you're editing to see where everything lines up. So, perfect, there we go, 1 hour. I kind of thought that would take a little bit of time, but I'm not surprised. Um, I'll stop sharing for a moment and just see if anybody has some sort of follow-up queries as to how that worked. Hopefully going through it a few times helped. I know you guys were taking notes. Jennifer, what's up?
Hi, Chris. How are you? Can you hear me?
You bet.
Okay, great. So my question is about the mail merge.
Mm-hmm.
Once you save it, it's always, for me, it's been saved as like a big group document. If that makes
Okay.
sense. So like, let's just use your certificates for an example. So you have the certificates and now you want to save them on your computer.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's one child that's absent. So you want to send it to them through email. How do you separate that one document from that big group mail merge? Like, how do we split them
Gotcha.
into individuals so we can send them digitally? If not, because it's always been like one big giant and they would receive all the certificates in the attachment.
Yeah, that makes sense because when I look at my certificate document that it's spit out here, letters 5, this is in this case, 29 pages, but if I only want to send Peter Parker his, and he's on page 14, what I would end up doing there is coming up to File and saying, let's see, not Save As, although I think I might be able to do that. Let me just try that one real quick. Save there. Can I specify pages here? No, I didn't think so. Okay. Sorry, that was more of an experiment. What I would do is go to print, and instead of printing everything, I'm going to print to a PDF, and I'm going to say, all I want is page 14. Yeah, custom print, yeah, page 14. That's all I want. And that way, when I hit print, I'm only going to get page 14. Now, in this case, I need to set up some Adobe stuff here to get that working properly because I kind of messed around with my machine a while ago. Yeah, that's my fault. And I'd be able to do it that way. The other option, if I did have the original still, and this is why I like to save both, is sometimes I need to mess with the data and sometimes I need to edit these individual versions, or somebody else has, deleted or changed data and I need the original to say, no, this is what we sent out. So I always save both. I save the one that's connected to data, and then I also save this larger multiple page version so that I end up with options and flexibility that way. But let's see if I have an option here to save just a single page. I feel like I should be able to do that without it just being the PDF option.
Or actually, what I'm really after is like if they could all be separated so that at any point I could go in and just select the one individual one, because I ran into trouble there with the student transfer forms. I kept having to resend them to parents, and they were all in a mail merge, and I just want them all separated so I could go in digitally and yeah.
And that's actually where I like having the original merge version available to me still. So this is the document that still has all those recipients connected to it. Because if I ever got a request for, say, Henry's, I could say, sure, no problem. Uncheck everybody, check just Henry. Okay. And now I've got just Henry all by himself, and I could hit that print merge again, either one of these really, and it would spit out just Henry's. So I could spit that out as many times as I needed to. If I got a request a week later going, we lost it, can we have another one? Okay, sure. I could just simply edit, check just Henry's name, and then go ahead and say finish again. Now that does require you to keep this document and the data. So you need those two files in order to be able to go back easily, quickly, and just recreate that as many times as you might need. Whereas if, as I suspect, you've got that larger document, let's just do that again. Edit individual. Yeah, you're hoping to sort of spit out individual files, like create 25 files or something, right? Because that's what you would actually be emailing to people.
Yes, correct.
Let me just think about that for half a second here. How would you do that? I think I've maybe even created a script before that did that. Yeah, I'm trying to think of how that would work. I think I would have to say here, yeah, it's not find recipient. I would have to just sort of merge a single one and save it that way. Or even just pull this up and hit print. That's actually an option as well. When I'm previewing results here, if I were to say edit recipient list again, and I only wanted Henry, I could say okay, so that I've got just Henry. And right from there, I could say, print this document or save as a PDF and just print that single document that way. There's not really a good like spit it out and spit out 25 separate ones. And yeah, you wouldn't necessarily want to, you don't have to sit there separating them manually because if there's more than, I mean, I've got a small example here, but if you've got a lot, that's going to be problematic. I think, yeah, maintaining that data and the document itself, so you've got those two files, is really your easiest way to create individual ones if you needed them. No, that's not something I'd want you to have to do for multiple ones. It's only those one-offs where you're going back and you're like, oh, sure, I'll grab that one again. But if you wanted, a few hundred individual files and you're going to do that every single time, I'm trying to think of the better way to do that. Can I send to, oh, that's to their email address. Yeah. Yeah, that's trying to connect to Outlook and do it that way. I was trying to sort of work something around that. I've done that with Excel too, where individual tabs get saved out as their own separate files, but that was a custom script that I wrote for some people in the office. I'll have to look at some good ways to do that actually, because you're right, there should be an easy way to take a merged document like this and instead of printing all those pages, which of course are individual by nature, you should be able to save them as their own separate files. That's not unreasonable at all. I'll have to think about that though and get back to you on that one. Yeah, waste of paper if you don't need them printed, exactly. So yeah, that's where having that data, if you have the data in the document, it's easy to just print the one that you want and not print a whole ton of them because yeah, that's a giant waste of paper and time and energy, especially if you've got to then sift through a couple hundred to find the one that you actually want to send out. That's craziness. So yeah, I'll have to figure that one out for you guys. And I'll let you know. And if I can get that worked out, I will put it along with all of this other information when I post it. Let me just find a little piece of paper here. pages. There we go. Okay. So perfect. We did obviously a bunch of different examples there, merging that Excel data with Word. I know a few of you are slipping out, and I get it. The last point I guess I'll leave you with, because I do want to let you go, is just remember that we can use both worlds. We're not stuck in just Office or just Google, and probably the strongest is to use all the best tools available to you. So what I'm thinking of when I say that is the simple fact that you can take a Google form. When you create a Google form, all of the entries that you get there, whether it's, what's your favorite color, or it's a registration for something, or everything in between, when you have teachers or students or parents or whoever fill in that Google form, you can have all that data land in a spreadsheet. It's a Google sheet, and that's fine. It all lands in one giant Google sheet with lots of data in there, which you can then, as we did today, just download that Google sheet as an Excel file and then use Word and Excel to do all the mail merge stuff. So you can take the really awesome data collection ability of a Google form and Google Sheets and then merge that, merge, with the mail merge features of Google Office, or Microsoft Office. Geez, I can't even speak now. And use both features, use the best elements of both sides of things to your advantage, because we're not limited to one or the other. I know when we first started using Google stuff, I had a lot of scared individuals saying, does this mean we're not going to have Word and Excel anymore? And of course I said, no, we're still going to use Office, but now we have all this awesome collaborative sharing online stuff that we can take advantage of as well. So don't be afraid to use both. They each have their strengths for sure. I tend to use almost exclusively the Google stuff, but that's partly the nature of what I'm doing too. I know some Office folks and others that still use a lot of Office and not as much as the Google stuff. And you guys are probably in that group, I'm willing to bet. So I will leave you with that and let you go. I will post all of that stuff on the Tech Talk page on our doc. So if you're not sure where that is, I'll go ahead and share my screen one last time here and show you that information. But if you want to bail out, that's okay too. Here I go, sharing. Awesome. So if I start at the main RDoc page and I simply come to Technology Services, amongst that group of icons at the top, I have included Tech Talk, which is the weekly Tech PD that I've started doing now every Monday. And if I scroll down, of course, that was today's session. There it was, January 10th. I'm going to scroll down past some of the, hey, sign up, and hey, well, not sign up, but give suggestions and things. And then I've got all the individual sessions in here. So it will be at the bottom. I've been adding the newest ones to the bottom, so I'll add it down here. And you will see that information, today's video, as well as anything else that I add to it to support what we've just done today. So I'll throw the sample document in there and a couple other things, and then I'll see what information I can find about that question in terms of saving individual pages after you've created the whole merge. Because yeah, I definitely see the value in being able to create a folder full of individual files, especially if that print to PDF feature is giving us grief. That should really be the absolute simplest way, is just print to PDF and then choose the page you want, and bang, you've got your individual document. And that way you don't have to store like 30 of them or 300 of them. You can store just the single file that has everything and spit out the individuals as you need them. But we shall see. For emailing purposes, you will need, a few individual files for sure. So I'll see what I can do about finding an answer to that. You are very welcome there, Penny. Hopefully everybody has a great day, and we will continue doing PD like this every Monday. I'll continue recording them, and I do try and alternate between sort of teacher classroom focused software and then office focused software that has been sort of neglected a little bit over the years as we went really teacher heavy with EAD sessions. I want to get back to helping you guys as much as possible. So, like I say, have a great day. I'm going to end the recording part right now. And of course, if anybody has additional questions, feel free to ask them.